Today our task is to choose 3 games company logos and try and recreate those in Illustrator. You're not looking to redesign them, you're just looking to replicate them using the tools that we've learned so far. So you can scroll down here in Google Images and find a whole bunch of logos. Some are more complex than others. I've been playing a bit of Dark Souls lately, so I've chosen the logo from Bandai Namco, the publisher of that game. So what I've done is I'll just right click and copy that image, and you can see in Illustrator I've already pasted it in there, but all I have to do is Control V to paste. Then if I'm resizing this, I have to hold Shift to maintain the aspect ratio. So I'll use that as my reference image. The most important thing about this logo as I see it is the brand mark of the words here, Bandai Namco. So I need to get this font right, I need to get this typography right, and I'm going to go to Google Fonts to do that. One way to match up the text with the Google Font options is to minimize one screen and open another tab with Google Fonts in it. In Google Fonts at the top here, you see where it says sentence. We can update the preview, so I'm going to use Bandai Namco in all caps, and you'll see that that updates for all of the fonts down here. Now to make this quicker, if you know a wee bit about typography, you can change the categories of what you're searching in. So in the categories serif, for example, we can see if we scroll on down, you'll see there's play fair display. These little parts here are serifs, these little ends that are extended out from all of the characters. They're in Merriweather as well, we see little serifs on that. Now we don't have any here, so we have a sans serif font. There's no serifs on it, so I'm going to click serif off. I'm also going to click handwriting off, because this is not a handwriting font, and it's not monospaced, it's spaced normally. So now we can look through fonts that are more likely to contain this font that we're looking for. We can also change the properties of the font here, so you can choose thickness, and then I'm going to ramp the thickness up until I find one. So that's about the thickness of my font there, so that's looking good. Let's go down one and see. Yeah, I'm feeling like this kind of thickness is about the thickness of that font. That's going to narrow that down enough. So already OpenSand isn't too far off what we have here in the Bandai Namco. The C is a bit different. The Namco C looks wider. So I'm going to scroll down here until I find something that looks as close as I can get it to the font I'm trying to mimic. So I'm going to compare these 3. I have Montserrat, Railway, and Martel Sand seem like fairly reasonable choices. So let's look down through Montserrat. Really anything is between bold and extra bold there, probably with the line width. The C is a wee bit more curled in, but it's not too bad. Just looking through the different characters. The B is elongated a bit horizontally. A, N is okay. D, A, I, N, A. The M is a wee bit tighter here on the Namco one, but that's not too bad. So Montserrat's definitely in the running. Railway, if I take a look at it, is not quite as wide a font, as you can see if I tab back and forwards between them there. So it's squashed in a wee bit, and I think that actually helps edging towards Railway probably. And then Martel Sand, you can see there's problems with this one. The M doesn't come down to the ground in the middle there. Extra bold's probably the closest. That B is a lot closer than the others. But unfortunately, because of the M, I'm going to have to leave that. It's got a nice open C as well, but I'm going to have to go with Railway on this one. So to download this font Railway, not knowing whether it's the bold, extra bold, or black just yet, I'm going to download the whole family. So I'm going to just select this style. It's a great font to use anyway, so that I'll have it in the future. So I'm just going to select all of the options for this family and scroll up to the top, go to View Selected Families, and then I can download all from there. Okay, I'm going to download that into my downloads, and then I'll just extract this. And you see there in the static folder, I have my licenses and things like that, but in the static folder I can select all of those, and then I can install. Back in Illustrator now, I'm going to choose the font that I've just installed by highlighting my font, or you could select it in the Layers tab that I don't have open. Oh, there's my layers here. I could select it here. Okay, and selecting it with this little button will just select the entire text. I can then type R for Railway, and there's thin, extra thin, light, etc. So let's take a look at bold, and I'm going to bump the size up a bit, so let's say to 50 points so we can see it a wee bit easier. Let's get it in the configuration that it's going to be in for the name. So all of your options for the text are going to be in the properties section here whenever you have this selected. So there's under character, for instance, under character, we can choose all of the options that we need to change the appearance of this text. You have the fill and the stroke here, which is fine for the moment, but right now I want to take a look at this character. So I'm going to first of all move my text closer. Then I'm going to take a look at the character options here. So that you see, if you hover over it, you can set the font size. In the character window of the properties tab, we can see all of the properties that we need for the text tool here. So I've just selected my text using the layers tab here. So the first one is the size. You can see from the drop down that this will change the size of your text. At the moment for me, a working size of 72 pixels works. Here you can also choose the leading. So the leading is going to be how far apart the text is if it's across 2 lines. So I need to change my leading a wee bit closer than it is. So what I'm going to do is change that to 60 and then bump it up to maybe, let's try 64. And a wee bit more, 68. Hit enter. That's a wee bit too much. Let's try 64. There we go. That's not looking too bad. Maybe bump it down a wee tiny bit. Okay. So that's the leading. The next thing is the kerning between the two characters. So notice that says between 2 characters. So this is different than the tracking, but the two are similar. So I'll show you tracking first. Tracking, whenever I click the drop down arrow, whenever you hover over these, you see it increases the spacing between all of the characters in what I've just typed. Okay, so that's really, really handy if you want to get a general sense of whether the letters should be closer together or further apart. So at 0 at the moment, it appears the letters need to be closer together. So I'm going to move that to -10. If I go to -25, they're starting to look a wee bit squashed maybe. Maybe not actually. I'm going to go to -25 on that. Cool. The next thing then is the kerning. So that says between 2 characters, and whenever we look down here, there's not a lot of options for us. That's because we have all the characters selected. So if I go between 2 characters, let's take a look at the A and D here. Okay, this will change the space between these 2 characters. So I'm just going to zoom in so that I can see the changes by holding Alt and scrolling forwards to zoom. And you see here, I've got -27 at the moment on my kerning. So if I scroll over these options, it doesn't change it. I have to click, and then it will put, so I put -100 there for that individual option. So I can Control Z to undo. So this D is a bit closer to the A. But one thing that I'm noticing whenever I zoom in is this is not bold enough. So I'm just going to select the whole thing, and I'm going to select bold, and then put that up to extra bold. And that's looking a lot more like my text here. Okay, so another thing that I've noticed is this M doesn't actually go to the ground, which is a real, that's quite a big problem for this text. So I'm going to change this to Montserrat, which I believe I have installed, thankfully. Yeah, I'm going to go for Montserrat with this. So, and let's try bold, somewhere between bold and extra bold. I'm going to say for this one bold. Extra bold looks a bit much. Okay, so you'll discover all sorts of things once you zoom in. And actually, now that I am zoomed in, I can see that the M of Montserrat doesn't meet the ground either, even though in my browser, the small text, it looks like that M's touching the ground, but it's just off. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to look through my font options, and I'm going to find one that works. After a lot of searching, I found this style here called Kula, which seems to tick most of the boxes. The one thing that I'm not overly happy with is the C, which is shorter than the rest. I've already got to fit in 6 letters above these 5, so we'll see how that works out when we bring it into Illustrator. Now with Kula font installed, I can select my layer here. I'm going to create a copy the same way we would any other object in Illustrator by using our move tool here, our selection tool, V, and holding Alt, clicking on it and dragging down. I can also hold Shift to drag it directly below. And then if I go and look for Kula, KH, you see here I've got Kula bold, or I've got Kula extra bold, and looking at my original, I reckon somewhere between the two, isn't it? I'm going to go with Kula bold for now. Now I still have to get my Bandai to line up with my Namco so that they're both exactly the same width you can see here. Now that's not actually going to be as big an issue with Kula as it is going to be with the Montserrat font, so I've done myself a favour there by accident. Montserrat is going to have to mess around with the kerning of a lot of these letters to get them closer, to get the Bandai fitted in above the Namco. So I'm just going to do that now and see if I can mess around with these settings, the size, leading, kerning and tracking, to get these words to line up perfectly together. So there are a few more options that are available to me for this text here. If you look at the character, there's 3 little full stops here. if I click that, it'll expand my options, and you'll see as well as the options above, I have things for vertical scale, so that chooses how tall our letters are, for horizontal scale, and that's quite good. I'm going to boost mine up a wee bit because that C isn't looking very wide by comparison. There's also setting the baseline shift, which sets what height the text starts at, and also finally the character rotation, so you can rotate the characters independent of each other, which may be quite useful for some of those games logos out there. So right now I'm going to delve into all of these options and try and get this text sitting as close as I can to the original. So that's about as close as I can get the text. You see I've added this red outline around it just to show you where I've added a stroke to increase the weight there. So if I turn that off, it would be back in bold. Ultra bold was too bold for me, so I'm just put on a black stroke around the outside, and that seems to have made it a lot closer to this original text, so I'm pretty happy with that. It all looks pretty well kerned, so that's me ready to start the shape design. So first off, I'm going to use my selection tool V there. I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to make a copy of that text and bring it up here. Now we're going to look at these shapes. So I could trace over the top of these shapes. That would be a good way of maybe mimicking them exactly. I'm going to try and guesstimate them at the moment. So here I'll select my pen tool, and I'm going to click and drag here for this point of the yellow shape this is. And I'm trying to look at where the top edge and the right edge and these edges are here, and I'm thinking a control point should go at each one of those places so it looks like there's a turn. Okay, so somewhere about here, and then somewhere about here, and that's a bit sharper, this one here. Turn that down like that. Here, just clicking and dragging. There's a wee kind of a bit of a flat bottom to that. And if I drag that up like that, that's not looking too bad. Okay, and I can either try and estimate the kind of color that we're looking for here. You see there's different shades of orange and yellow in the swatches. I could try and guess it using the color picker here, but what I'm going to do is use the little eyedropper tool on the left. That's shortcut I, and then I can match exactly that shape there. And the stroke I want completely off, so I'm going to use this little crossed out to deactivate the stroke, and you'll see I have something there. It looks quite good. I'm going to drag that path underneath the text, and now what I can do is go in, select the text, and I can change the fill and stroke to white so that it resembles the original text. So that's not looking too bad. I'm going to select both of those just by dragging around them with my V tool, my selection tool. I'm going to move them into space here. Let's create our next shape. So using our pen tool P. So there, after a lot of faffing around, I have something that looks relatively like the thing. What I could do is select this path, and I could change the opacity down so that I can see through it whenever I'm working away on this. And that's probably how they actually formed this logo. It looks like they just turned the opacity down on a bright orange. But so that I get all the colors right, what I'm going to have to do is use the Pathfinder tool that we used before. So to do that, you're going to have your Pathfinder menu open here, which is just at the bottom. If it's not showing in yours, go to Window and Pathfinder. Okay, so you'll see at the bottom, what I really want is this divide tool so that it divides the intersecting shape up. So I'm going to select both of these shapes. I'm going to press the divide tool, and then what you get is a shape in the middle that is divided from the rest by the outlines of the other shapes. So you can see that from the preview here, and I'm going to change the color to mimic the logo that I have here. And I could make some fine adjustments to the shape, although that is pretty dead on. So there we go. That is it can be a long process, especially finding the correct font, but I haven't done too bad a job there of mimicking the style. You do notice this rounded C compared to the angular C here, but all in all was as good as I could get it really, especially eyeballing it and not doing any tracing or copying that way. So I want you to have a go at doing 3 logos. Get them as close as you can. If there are no fonts that work in Google Fonts, you can try DAW fonts or 1001 fonts, or just either adapt by using the pen tool some of your text, or use whatever's closest. So let's see how you get on with that exercise, recreating 3 game company logos.